I'm Dwight Drummond. Tonight, a southern Ontario town searches for answers after a young girl's body was found in the Grand River.
Me having children, your head goes there, and it's not pleasant.
The girl's identity is not known and a cause of death is still being determined. We'll have the latest from police. Plus,
we're going to continue to be visible, highly visible out on the road.
It's going to be a bit rough weather, but hoping for the best, make the most of it. It's a long weekend, so kind of tradition.
A taste of summer, people hit the roads for what's expected to be the first busy travel long weekend of the year. And
you can't say you're for lower gas prices and in favor of the carbon tax.
My team is really the only team in Ontario that's prepared to take on big oil.
Gas prices drop before the long weekend but head back up quickly, and fuel affordability continues to be a hot topic on the campaign trail. And today the NDP said they'd regulate the price of gas. Unlike the PCs and Liberals, they are promising a tax cut on gas. Lorena Redekop has more.
My team is really the only team in Ontario that's prepared to take on big oil.
Andrea Horvath says an NDP government would tackle gas prices by having the Ontario Energy Board set the maximum price each week based on the markets.
We can regulate the gas prices. We can put a cap on those gas prices. We can stop the gouging.
It's not a new NDP policy.
I've heard that commitment from the NDP, I think, from the last 2 or maybe 3 election campaigns. We know in parts of Canada, like for example in the East Coast, they have tried efforts to regulate gas prices. It doesn't actually work.
The NDP disagrees, pointing to U.S. politicians fighting for the same policy. The Liberals are backing the PC plan to cut the gas tax by 5.7 cents a litre for 6 months, and reminding people of Doug Ford's promise 4 years ago and his warning that a vote for the other parties would equal $2 gas prices. The PCs are also looking back to 2018, attempting to bring back another issue, the federal carbon tax.
I asked the question to the 3 other leaders. Are you for the carbon tax? The answer is yes, they're for the carbon tax. You can't say you're for lower gas prices and in favor of the carbon tax.
But taxpayers also get a rebate for the carbon tax. And it's only added in Ontario due to the last PC government removing a measure to cap greenhouse gas emissions. The Green Party's focus is moving away from needing gas, offering rebates on electric vehicles and adding more charging stations. This all comes following an unusual occurrence ahead of a long weekend. Gas prices actually went down. So could this issue sway how people vote?
It's like we're going to keep bus prices fixed for 2 years. We're going to do this for 6 months. And it's like we need an actual sustainable long-term plan.
But he's also not sure about the NDP's idea to regulate prices. This driver is.
I agree 100%. Yeah, it's insane. Gas prices are way too high right now.
With advance polls now open, this long weekend is seen as a time when voters start talking about the election more, possibly deciding how they'll mark their ballot. Lorena Redekop, CBC News, Toronto.
Doug Ford's Progressive Conservatives are aiming to draw support from what you might think is an unlikely source of voters, people who backed Justin Trudeau's Liberal Party in the last federal election. Queen's Park reporter Mike Crawley explains.
They're 2 politicians who in the past have often sparred.
And everyone's so happy and positive, despite living in Doug Ford's Ontario.
And you have Justin Trudeau's hand in your other pocket. They're getting...
But in this campaign, you don't hear Doug Ford talking down the Prime Minister.
We've all worked so well together, no matter if it's throughout the pandemic or building subways or getting more jobs in the auto sector.
One big reason why? To win this provincial election, the PC leader needs to woo at least some of the 2.5 million Ontarians who just 8 months ago voted for Justin Trudeau's Liberals in the federal election. If Ford only gets support from those who backed Erin O'Toole's federal Conservative Party, he cannot succeed.
There's just not enough Conservatives in the province for you to win a majority government or even a minority government with them alone.
Multiple polls suggest Ford is attracting those federal Liberal voters, as much as 25% of them. That translates into potentially hundreds of thousands of votes for the PCs.
It's definitely a large chunk of the electorate. It could make the difference in some of the key ridings. It could certainly propel them to a majority government.
Abdul Aleem is one of these Trudeau voters for Ford.
I have no complaint about both, honestly.
Aleem lives in Vaughan and says he voted Liberal federally.
And in this provincial election, you're going to vote for Doug Ford's party?
Most likely.
His reason in both cases, their handling of COVID-19.
Ford basically, he was very calm during the pandemic. He did not panic, first of all.
The polling data suggests some common themes of why federal Liberal voters would mark their provincial ballot for the PCs.
They generally like Doug Ford personally. They see him as a strong leader. They say they have a favorable view of him. They think he's make the best premier out of all the other choices available.
With 2 weeks to go, standing here and presuming that we know how anybody in this province is going to vote, I think we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves.
Ford's PCs believe that wooing those federal Liberal voters will help pave their way to victory on June 2nd. Mike Crawley, CBC News, Toronto.
A recent Radio Canada poll indicates Doug Ford is the favorite candidate among Franco-Ontarians in the provincial election. When asked by Radio Canada if the support for Francophones would motivate Ford to learn French, here's what he had to say.
Obsessed with learning French. I took a little break because of COVID, but I'm going to get right back at it. And first of all, I just want to thank all the Francophone Ontarians. I'm very, very grateful.
This comes 4 years after Franco-Ontarians held protests against the PC government. They were upset the province had downgraded Ontario's independent watchdog on French language services and scrapped plans for a French language university in the GTA. Ford is pegging the recent increase in support to Minister of Francophone Affairs, Caroline Mulroney, who helped launch the new French language public university last year. For many, the Victoria Day long weekend is the unofficial start to summer, and that means lots of people on the roads heading up to cottage country. The OPP say they will be out keeping highways safe after what they say has already been a deadly start to the year on Ontario roads. Greg Ross has the details.
I'll be on bread. One last pit stop before a long weekend away from the city.
Just relax, have a few beers by the fire, fish, and enjoy.
We're just going to set up some campers and go quadding for the weekend.
For many, it's the first weekend getaway of the year, now that the weather is getting warmer.
People have been waiting for the unofficial start of summer. A lot of traffic going north already.
Travelers should be aware the OPP will also be out in full force this weekend.
We're going to continue to be visible, highly visible out on the roads, making sure drivers are aware that we're out there. We're going to be out looking for those high-risk driving behaviors, impaired driving, inattentive driving, aggressive speeding.
According to the OPP, this has already been a deadly year on Ontario roadways. They say that they haven't seen a motor vehicle fatality rate this high in a decade.
We've already had 107 people lose their lives this year alone on roads across the province, and drivers just making bad decisions.
Many cars on the road this weekend will be pulling trailers or have items fastened to the roof. This can be a safety hazard if not done properly.
Last weekend we had several trailers lose their wheels, either bearing failures or wheel fastener failures. Poorly maintained equipment that hasn't seen the road for a year, and all of a sudden now they're dragging up north, loaded with all kinds of cargo.
This family wasn't taking any chances with their camper.
Oh yeah, everything's got to be safe. We've done like 3 or 4 circle checks, so to make sure everything's road safe.
This group of friends will be camping this weekend. They say not only do they plan to get there safely, they're also prepared for whatever Mother Nature throws their way.
May long weekend usually rains, so we brought enough tarps to supply the circus with, so we should be all right.
Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
If you're hoping to take a trip to Niagara Falls this weekend but don't want to pay the high gas prices to drive there, you are in luck. Starting tomorrow, Metrolinx is bringing back its seasonal weekend and holiday service to the Falls.
We've been holding back some of our services, waiting for ridership to return, and now they really have returned. Many have returned, especially on the weekend. We're up to over 75% ridership now, and that's the highest we've ever experienced during the pandemic.
3 Lakeshore West trains will go to and from Union Station in Niagara Falls per day on weekends and holidays until Thanksgiving weekend. Metrolinx says it's also increasing trips on the Up Express, Barrie, Kitchener, and Stouffville lines starting tomorrow. And Nick, you heard what the gentleman in Greg's story said. They brought tarps, lots and lots of tarps. Well, they need them.
Yeah, you know what, Dwight? I mean, it's May 2-4 weekend, right? Of course, there's going to be rainfall, but actually, it's shaping up to be one of the better ones that I can remember, at least in terms of the temperatures. We'll start with that, and then we'll talk about the rain in just a second here. Not a washout by any means. Sitting at 23 degrees right now in the city of Toronto. That's pretty much the same story elsewhere. But really, it's the humidity. You've got a humidex that's up around 29 in the GTA, 30 out toward Hamilton right now. So feeling even warmer. And in fact, even heading into tonight, through the overnight, we're looking at very mild temperatures. And we're actually talking about humidex values through the overnight, believe it or not. There are severe thunderstorm watches and warnings to the north. However, for us, though, we remain in this sort of warm sector. So this is going to change our weather. And if you do have plans or, folks that you know are heading up north, yeah, this is going to bring with it some rain, likely heavy rainfall and thunderstorms tonight before it slides down through the GTA. Now, it sort of dissipates as we head through the overnight period. The risk for a few spotty showers, it looks like kind of toward the noon hour, we'll see maybe some showers or an isolated thunderstorm, then a bit of a break, and then tomorrow night, we've got more in the way of showers and thunderstorms, especially down around the Niagara region. For now, though, 19. That's 19 degrees through the overnight period. That's your low. 27 tomorrow, humidex of 33. We'll have your full long weekend forecast in just a bit.
We will see you in a bit. Thank you, Nick.
You bet.
Russian forces are tightening their grip on the eastern region of Ukraine, while the Ukrainian fighters who surrendered at Mariupol are still being processed as prisoners of war. Battles are intensifying on other fronts. CBC's Briar Stewart has the latest.
In this video, the latest wave of Ukrainian fighters from Mariupol are brought to the site of a former penal colony. Russia says around 2,000 have surrendered from the Azovstal steel plant and that it's now liberated. Those claims haven't been confirmed. The wives and mothers of some fighters continue to plead for help from the international community.
My husband is on the way from one hell to another hell.
The fate of those who are now prisoners of war is uncertain, and so is the future of Ukraine's Donbas region. Russian forces ramped up their assault, taking aim at one of the last territories held by Ukraine in Luhansk. Ukraine's national police released this video of people being evacuated from Severodonetsk, an area where they say 12 were killed on Thursday. The Russian military is completely destroying the area, says Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky. It's hell there, and it's not an exaggeration. Ukrainian officials say a Russian missile hit a cultural center Friday just to the west of the Donbas. They say there were 7 victims, including a child. Even in areas like Kharkiv, where Ukraine has managed to push the Russians away from the city, the sounds of artillery are still frequently heard. This man's apartment was hit during shelling. Well, I'm not suffering that much, but others have been killed, he said, and that will never be forgiven. How can we forgive them? Well, the attacks are intensifying in the east. To the south of where I am, Russia already controls a large swath of Ukraine's southern coast. It's difficult to get an accurate picture of life in the occupied territories, but there are reports that Russia is bringing in its own currency and making plans to hold referendums to call for Russia to annex the regions. Briar Stewart, CBC News, Dnipro, Ukraine.
A man found dead in his car after a single-vehicle accident in Pickering Thursday afternoon was the victim of a shooting. Durham police officers responded to a single motor vehicle collision involving a gray four-door Honda at Taunton Road and 4th Concession around noon Thursday. They arrived to find one person in the car who was pronounced dead at the scene. Both the homicide unit and the collision unit are investigating. Police are asking anyone who was in the area between 11:30 and 12:30 who may have dashcam video to contact them. There's anxiety in a southern Ontario town of just 12,000 people. A little girl's body was found in the Grand River by a fisherman this week. Her identity isn't known, and it isn't clear how she died. Alicia Son has more from Dunnville, Ontario, where the community is desperate for answers.
Shocked, just like everybody in this town. It's a small town, right? So you don't ever have this, really.
Ever since a little girl's body was found here on Tuesday, the people of Dunnville have been desperate for answers.
It was like the saddest thing I could actually ever dream of, because I have 2 kids of my own right now and another one on the way. It makes me wonder if I can actually let my kids out and play and stuff anymore.
3 days after she was discovered, the biggest questions still remain. Was she murdered? When? And how? And who was she?
Right now, we don't have a name for her. We don't know who she is.
The OPP has been searching missing persons databases across Ontario, but no matches yet. Her age is still unknown, but forensic analysis this week has brought police closer to an answer.
That's been narrowed approximately to 10.5 months to 2.5 years.
It's unclear how long the little girl's body was here. The marshy patch of the Grand River where she was found was actually underwater just a few days earlier.
There was some decomposition, which isn't helpful.
While forensic tests continue, Ontario Provincial Police are asking the public for any information. Their tip line is open.
This is an incident that affects the whole community. You know, we look after our children, and they're vulnerable, and yeah, we just want to bring this to an end and find out this little girl's identity and determine the circumstances.
Everybody's talking about it. It's a small town. It's obviously jarring when something like that happens, especially in a town like this. And me having children, you know, your head goes there, and it's not pleasant.
While the police investigation continues, the community here is organizing a candlelit vigil next week for the little girl, whether they know who she is by then or not. Ali Chiasson, CBC News, Dunnville, Ontario.
Protests continue in the island nation of Sri Lanka. The country has been in the midst of a financial crisis for months, and things are only getting worse. Jessica Ng explains how Canadians are trying to help out their loved ones abroad.
In Sri Lanka, moves are being made to deal with a gas shortage and the worst economic crisis in decades. Days ago, the country defaulting on its international debts, and their inflation has skyrocketed to nearly 40%.
They're feeling very desperate right now. The immediate need right now is for fuel, for electricity, for medicine.
Essential medications like insulin are in short supply or are unavailable in some areas.
The medicines for the diabetic patients, and the heart patients, that blood thinners, because of the lack of the foreign funds that we have been unable to import.
The consulate has put out a plea for Canadian donations of medical supplies to send overseas. For months, there have been long lines and sometimes fighting to buy those essentials, as well as gas and groceries.
There are lines for gasoline which stretch miles. People don't have cooking gas, and there's a significant degree of anger on successive governments, which from 70 years onwards have contributed to this.
Anti-government rallies have led to a near dismantling of the ruling family, the country replacing its prime minister just last week. Some say a strong police and military presence have added to the economic strain of the island nation.
The civil war is over now 12 years ago, and yet the armed forces continue to be at their same strength. So that is a huge drain on the public purse.
For now, Sri Lanka has suspended repayment of its $51 billion in foreign loans, and supplies of everything from fertilizer, food, and those essential medicines remain low. Harasha Navaratna, Sri Lanka's High Commissioner to Canada, says the embassy is also accepting monetary donations to help family members abroad.
We are mobilizing the Sri Lankan immigrants here, Sri Lankan Canadians here, and their organizations to assist in this grave situation back at their former homeland.
Jessica Ng, CBC News, Toronto.
The Public Health Agency of Canada has confirmed 2 cases of monkeypox in Quebec, and it's monitoring more than 20 other possible cases. There are now a growing number of countries that are reporting outbreaks of the virus. Hannah Thibodeau has more.
Doctors say symptoms of monkeypox typically start with a fever, backache, and fatigue. But the most noticeable one is a rash or lesion on the skin that looks like mini volcanoes. It's spread by close contact and respiratory droplets. But you could also get it by touching contaminated clothes or bedding or contact with bodily fluids.
From blisters or ulcers or others of the skin lesions. But we should, of course, remain open-minded as we begin to investigate this rather unusual event of spread beyond Africa. We haven't got to the bottom of some of these transmission chains. These are just beginning to be explored. Most people haven't traveled. So how is it being transmitted?
That is the big question. There are no clear links between some of the infections.
We do know that not many of these individuals are connected to travel to Africa where the disease is normally seen. So this is unusual. It's unusual for the world to see this many cases reported in different countries outside of Africa.
There is no specific vaccine for monkeypox, but doctors say it is similar to smallpox and are starting to use the smallpox vaccine on this new virus. But since smallpox was eliminated in 1980, there's only a small amount of that vaccine.
We are having discussions internationally, but also with provincial counterparts around potential use. And we have limited supply.
Health officials say to expect to have more confirmed cases in the coming days.
Recognition there is a syndrome means that prospective surveillance will probably pick up cases in that sense. And so, don't be alarmed if it happens. It is really, again, that epidemiologic work that's happening in real time in that sense.
Doctors say local authorities are doing contact tracing, but are still unsure about the extent of the spread in Canada. Hannah Thibodeau, CBC News, Ottawa.
A new study from McGill University and scientists in Italy could offer clues about how some pain could become chronic. It suggests the standard practice of blocking inflammation short-term to tackle pain after an injury might be the opposite of what we should be doing. Christine Bierak has the story.
And so what is here?
These are blood samples from people with lower back pain, part of Dr. Luda Diachenko's study at McGill University, looking into why some people's pain heals faster than others. The results were stunning.
Well, the first reaction was it must be a mistake.
Her findings challenge conventional medical advice that says if you're in pain, take a pill that reduces inflammation, like Advil or aspirin.
There is a new discovery in our hands. And it's a little bit different from what we all believed.
Diachenko studied nearly 100 people with acute lower back pain. Blood samples were taken when they first reported pain and 3 months later. Results showed those who healed quickly had clear markers of rapid, intense inflammation led by white blood cells. But samples from those still in pain did not show any signs of that inflammatory response.
We don't like inflammation because it hurts. Are we looking at pain for both?
Diachenko asked Jeffrey Mogill to do a similar study with mice using medications that block inflammation. Results showed mice that received the anti-inflammatory drugs had less pain at first, but were more likely to have pain 3 to 6 months later.
Yes, stopping it is a good idea right now, but at the cost of increasing your chances to develop chronic pain, which is going to be a much bigger problem.
McGill researchers also analyzed data from back pain patients and found similar results. They're now organizing human trials to confirm their work. But already, doctors around the world are intrigued.
So this is a pretty landmark finding.
The question doctors often get from patients in pain is, what should I take? Anti-inflammatory drugs are widely considered safe, but
it certainly gives me reason to pause and say, okay, how soon do I reach for an anti-inflammatory? Because the clinical practice is to reach for it very early.
It's kind of like a stabbing pain.
Steve Katz is treating his back pain with exercise, physiotherapy, and painkillers. He knows meds aren't a cure-all.
At the same time, I'm allergic to pain.
There are pain meds that don't block inflammation, including Tylenol.
You already worked out today?
But experts say non-medical interventions can be a better place to start.
That first 24 to 48, I would say, if you can get through it, try and see if you can. Face me.
Short-term pain that may offer long-term relief. Christine Bierak, CBC News, Toronto.
China is condemning Ottawa's ban on the use of Huawei and ZTE equipment in Canada's 5G telecom network. Beijing says it will take steps to safeguard the rights of Chinese companies. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says Canada is prepared for any challenges, but he's still facing questions about why it took so long to implement the ban. Catherine Cullen reports.
We know that Chinese government officials are not happy with this decision, saying today that any talk of security risks, that those are, quote, trumped up. The suggestion by the Canadian government is that they are making this decision in order to protect the safety and security of Canadians, of their telecommunications network. They've been reluctant to be more specific about the risks, but we know from discussions within security agencies, discussions within allied countries, that the fear is that this technology would be used to spy on Canadians, despite the fact that Huawei is ostensibly a private company. The fear is that the Chinese government would use this to spy on citizens of countries like Canada. So China saying, suggestion of security risk, that's trumped up, and that when it comes to the Chinese government response to this, that they are prepared to take, quote, all necessary measures to protect Chinese companies. Now, the Prime Minister said today, well, listen, if there is a challenge, for example, before the World Trade Organization, Canada understands that that might happen, but they still believe that this was the right decision to protect Canadians. But what about that question around timing? This is a decision that many allied countries made years ago. The process of actually getting Huawei technology out of Canada's telecommunications system, well, that is going to take years still. In the meantime, though, the government says it is intent on protecting Canada's telecommunications network, and in fact says it's going to introduce new legislation to try to do just that, and that is coming soon. Catherine Cullen, CBC News, Ottawa.
The investigation into last weekend's mass shooting in Buffalo continues, but urgent questions remain about what steps led the gunman to the massacre and whether anything could have been done to intervene along the way. Karen Pauls takes a look at what we are learning.
This is how it ended. 13 people shot, most of them black, 10 of them killed.
It's just the lives that were lost. It was just like horrible.
We also know more about how this racist attack began, when the shooter was exposed to white supremacist ideology on the online platform 4chan.
It's a kind of what some people have called the kind of sewer of the internet, where people joke about rape and gang rape and racism and racial slurs and homophobia.
From there, the shooter moved to Discord, a chatting platform popular with young gamers. He wrote a racist manifesto and kept an online diary detailing the planning and execution of a racially motivated attack. In posts like these, he asks how to get information on tactical gear and what kind of bullets will defeat body armor. Discord flagged one of the shooter's posts when he tried to upload the Christchurch shooter's manifesto to his diary, but no one followed up.
If they even bothered to look at his diary, it would have been immediately clear that he's planning an attack, because he says so directly and openly. From the long list of red flags that were missed, you can also add this one.
In an email, Discord says the diary was on a private, invite-only server. Half an hour before the attack, a small group of people were invited to join.
We don't know if any of those people contacted the authorities. We do know that diary is circulating online, along with the shooter's video of the attack, which was live streamed on the Amazon-owned video game platform Twitch. The video was removed 2 minutes after the violence began, but it was too late.
Within New Zealand, the live stream and that manifesto are not available for the public.
The Christchurch massacre and its perpetrator are mentioned as inspiration for the Buffalo attack. In its aftermath, New Zealand made it illegal to view, possess, or distribute content it classifies as objectionable.
We really need to look to the tech companies to be able to take some responsible action.
The Liberal government promised to address online safety with legislation in the first 100 days after last year's election. That deadline long passed. It has established a panel of experts to advise the Heritage Minister.
Online harm is real harms. Online violence is real violence, and we have to tackle that.
Before more innocent lives are lost. Karen Pauls, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Items of historical and cultural significance for Canada have been in a British museum for more than a century. Now, those items are coming home. Chris Brown tells us why that is happening and looks at the emotions surrounding their return.
This museum in Exeter, England, and the buckskin shirt and leggings on display inside are a long way from the Alberta foothills where they were once worn by Chief Crowfoot, a hero of the Blackfoot Nation.
Those items that
never were intended to be in museums. They were intended to be part of the way of living.
After COVID and other bureaucratic delays, the regalia and artifacts were finally returned to Crowfoot's descendants during an inspiring ceremony. His great-great-great-great-grandson came to receive them.
Were they sold? Were they stole? Were they given as gifts? And it was probably all of those things. I think it's irrelevant how it got over here, because at this point it's like, how do we get these items back home?
This moment has been over 118 years in the making, from the time the museum here in Exeter acquired Chief Crowfoot's items until returning them to the Blackfoot. Crowfoot was a chief with influence across North America during the time he lived. Most famously, he signed Treaty 7, which he hoped would provide an economic future for the Blackfoot people.
Chief Crowfoot was one of our great leaders that led the people to survival, I guess.
It was commonplace for Western museums to simply take regalia and artifacts without much concern for who their rightful owners might be. So the Blackfoot are visiting other British museums and discovering more items they'd like returned.
It gives me chills to think that Canadians will be able to get educated the proper way and evidence and see that that was a true history of our people.
Until I saw it with its rightful owners today, you don't really understand the significance.
The Exeter Museum may be losing exhibits, but its director says it's building an important new relationship with the Blackfoot. Chris Brown, CBC News in Exeter, England.
It is the unofficial start of summer. Nick, what do you have for us?
Well, Dwight, I got some pretty summer-like weather for you, at least today and tomorrow. And then even after that, we've got some very nice mild temperatures into the weekend. Starting with today, now temperatures hovering around 23 degrees throughout the afternoon, but it was the humidity that made it feel even warmer than that. There's a look at current temperature, still sitting at 23 degrees. And broad look at this I was going to say wind chills. Humidex values up around 30. So there's a look at current Humidex values, in fact, a little bit higher down in southwestern Ontario, but nonetheless, still very mild across the GTA. It has come with a little bit of cloud cover. What we're looking at here is this system that's approaching. If you look anywhere to the south of this sort of cloud band, this is the warm sector. We're getting these southwesterly winds as well that are pushing in some humidity. Now, that heat and humidity is the fuel, and then this front that's going to push across, that's the trigger that's likely going to trigger off some thunderstorms as we move through the next, say, 24 to 48 hours. For tonight, some cloud cover in place. Tomorrow morning generally should be dry. I think through sort of the late morning, early afternoon hours, you're going to see the first round of showers, maybe thunderstorms in there, but that's not really the main punch from this system. What'll happen is that it'll sort of break up. We'll get some sunshine tomorrow, and then into the evening hours, starting along the lake. I think with the lake breeze, we're going to trigger off some more thunderstorms, and those should generally spread around the Golden Horseshoe and surrounding areas. Some areas getting hit more than others, especially down around the Niagara region. Sunday morning, still some lingering showers. Looks like by Sunday afternoon, it begins to clear out. But slightly cooler temperatures in behind that, taking us back down to seasonal. So 19 degrees, 20 degrees tonight. With the Humidex tonight, it's going to feel like about 24, 25. So very muggy night in place. Tomorrow, still 27, Humidex of 34. Back to seasonal on Sunday. Not an all-day washout. Monday looks pretty good, and up to 21 by Tuesday. Dwight.
We will be able to salvage the long weekend. Thank you, Nick.
You bet.
As a baby formula shortage drags on, Canada and the U.S. are making big moves to try to keep store shelves stocked. Chris Reyes lays out their plans and when the factory shutdown at the center of it all could finally end.
And at any point, did FDA become concerned about a lack of supply in the days prior or following the closure of this plant?
Grilled by U.S. lawmakers, the head of the FDA promised there is an end in sight to the shortage of baby formula in his country. Abbott Nutrition is preparing to reopen the plant shut down in February after a recall. The company is the main baby formula supplier for the U.S. and Canada.
I'm pleased to say we've already made significant progress, and I think we are on track to get open within the next week to 2 weeks.
Supplies would likely take longer to get to Canada. Ottawa is now temporarily easing restrictions on the importation of European formulas. The U.S. is taking even more drastic measures. President Joe Biden has invoked the Defense Production Act.
The Defense Production Act gives the government the ability to require suppliers to direct needed resources to infant formula manufacturers before any other customer who may have ordered that good.
The president has also authorized the Pentagon to fly formula in from overseas. Still, critics say his government didn't act fast enough.
I give everybody an F on the entire spectrum of this. Nobody focused on this like they needed to.
As government officials scramble to deal with the shortage, parents, moms in particular, are taking matters into their own hands, with some using social media to find solutions.
Can I give you a hug? Yes. Okay.
These two moms in Florida met online, one providing the other with extra breast milk. Social media is full of parents doing the same thing. Some doctors are issuing warnings about unregulated sharing. Parents say the shortage leaves them with no choice.
For us, it's not dramatic, but I really feel for those moms who have anything else to feed to their babies.
A desperation that won't quickly disappear, even with new measures from lawmakers. Chris Reyes, CBC News, New York.
And as we head to break, let's take a look at where the markets closed today. The TSX closed up by 15 points. The Dow also rising by 8 points. The dollar traded lower at 77.95 cents US. Stay with us. We'll be right back. The May long weekend represents the unofficial start to summer, which means many people will be putting out patio furniture, having picnics, or heading to a campground. And if you're a person of a certain age, you might see a familiar sight, a retro-style lawn chair that is making a comeback.
The inspiration comes from years past when we were growing up, or at least my age. We grew up with these chairs in our family. We would take them to picnics and, kind of everywhere, camping. And we love the retro design of them, just the simplistic design of them, but we didn't love the actual materials that they used when they used to build them. We loved that they were lightweight, made of aluminum, but the material that you sat in was hard and plasticky kind of feel, and you sit on them and they feel like they're cutting your legs. But what we did was introduce sort of like it's almost like a webbing material, so it's like what you would find in a car seatbelt, and that seatbelt material is what we use to make these chairs. So it's a lot more comfortable, a lot more relaxing to kind of sit in, and we just wanted to use some vibrant colors, some colors from years past, but also just some colors that people sort of trend to right now. They've been very popular. Yes, it's probably one of our most popular chairs that we sell, simply just because I think it goes a little bit further past the traditional sort of standard camping chair, I guess you could say, with the introduction of different colors and brighter colors and stuff like that. It's just, it kind of catches the eye, and people just love to kind of, reminisce about the times when they used to use their parents and how they were so terrible, and now these ones are so much more comfortable.
Kicking it old school. All right, the City of Toronto is opening its splash pads this long weekend. Starting tomorrow, they will operate daily from 9 in the morning until 8:30 in the evening. The city's wading pools aren't set to open, unfortunately, until late June. And the city is reminding residents about fireworks safety over the long weekend. City bylaws prohibit people from setting off fireworks in the city parks and beaches. Now, on Victoria Day, fireworks are permitted on private property until 11 p.m. Public fireworks are returning to Ashbridges Bay on the holiday for the first time since 2019. The fireworks display will start at 10 p.m. on Monday. And I think Wonderland also has fireworks in a few other places around the GTA, Nick.
Yeah, I think you're right there, Dwight. And I also think the weather's going to cooperate for us for Monday night as well. It'll be a little bit cooler than what it is right now, but temperatures about seasonal. However, clear skies, so something to look forward to on Monday. When we talk about the heat, often we talk about, of course, the temperatures, but we also talk about the humidex as well. I'm going to bring in one other thing, and I think Colette mentions this once in a while. It's the dew point, and the dew point is a number, like the temperature, but it's a number, and it measures the actual amount of moisture in the atmosphere. So the higher the dew point, the higher the humidity. The other thing I want to point out about it, though, is that generally the dew point puts a lower cap on, or a lower limit on the overnight temperatures. So the higher the humidity, generally we get warmer temperatures at nighttime as well. And that's what we're seeing right now. So dew point values close to the 20 mark, and so our overnight temperatures will remain close to the 20 mark as well for tonight. It will also come with a blanket of some cloud cover. The thunderstorms up to the north won't factor into the GTA for tonight, but tomorrow some isolated showers and thunderstorms. Temperatures to 27 degrees, humidex of about 33, even 34. Long range forecast looks like this. Again, for Sunday, we've got some morning showers. I think they're going to clear out into the afternoon. Monday, as promised, though, we've got sunshine that sticks around. Still double digits through the overnight, though, so it shouldn't be too bad if you're heading out to watch the fireworks.
Yeah, not bad for a holiday Monday.
No, and I've said this a few times today. I've seen a lot worse on May 2-4 than this.
We have.
It's pretty good.
Thank you, Nick. Enjoy, buddy.
Yeah, you too.
That is our show for tonight. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you back here Monday at 6. Have a great long weekend, everybody.